Hey everyone, this is Riddle Hagaraja Raven. I'm here with my recap and review of The Last of Us Season number 1, Episode number 3. And Episode 3 has been one of the most anticipated episodes this season because, it was supposed to give us Bill and Frank content that wasn't necessarily in the game. And I have to say, having watched this particular episode, I think the entire Bill and Frank relationship was handled very well, and it went with the overall narrative vibe of The Last of Us about love and protecting other people and even putting your own life to protect other people and everything like that. So yeah, I really enjoyed this episode, and yeah, let's get into it. So it opened up with Ellie and Joel, and Joel is of course very sad that Tess ended up sacrificing herself to protect Joel and Ellie. And he has these emotions that he needs to address these emotions sooner or later. He has to. And I like the fact that Ellie is like, hey, Joel, I'm going to say this and you need to listen. You don't get to blame me, okay? No one forced you to take me wherever. And you guys did that because you needed that battery for a car. So no one forced you. So you don't get to blame me for Tess's death. And I like the fact that Ellie stood up for herself. She did. Even though she is a kid, considering the environment that she has grown up in, she is mature, quite mature for her age, and that's why I like the fact that she was mature enough to tell Joel that, hey, you don't get to blame me, okay? So she's like, okay, so how much longer until Bill and Frank's? And he's like, well, I guess it's a 5-hour hike, so let's go. So as these two are walking, they talk about random stuff. Ellie notices a scar on Joel's forehead, and she's like, hey, how did you get that scar? Did you, like, fall down from the stairs or something lame? And Joel is like, no, it's not that. It's just that, it's not the forehead, my bad. I think it's a cheek scar. You can, like, see it here, right? This is the scar. But yeah, he's like, no, someone shot at me and he missed. And she's like, okay, so you shoot that guy back? And he's like, yeah, I did, but I missed. That tends to happen a lot when you're basically firing at other people. You miss shots. Because Joel is running low on supplies, especially ammunition, he goes to this outpost where he ends up... It's not necessarily an outpost, well, technically it's like a stash house where he ended up keeping certain items and everything, and he's like, hey, don't touch nothing, I'm trying to figure out where I ended up hiding those items because it's been a while since I've been here. And then we get this scene where Ellie is very excited because she sees this arcade machine which has Mortal Kombat on it, and she talks about Melina as a character that she thinks is very cool. And Joel is like, okay, whatever. Anyway, you can search around, just don't do nothing, okay? And of course, Ellie, being a kid, she lets curiosity get the best of her. Ellie notices this cellar and she's like, yep, I'm going down. And I'm like, Ellie, don't do that. But hey, who's gonna stop her, right? So she comes on down and she notices an item that she needs and she's like, yep, I'll take that. And as she's bagging the item, this is where she hears an infected growl and she's like, who's there? And it turns out that, yeah, there is an infected down there, but he is like trapped in some rubble. It's still alive and it's looking at Ellie, and Ellie goes quite close to it. She takes out her little knife and she cuts the forehead to see the infection coming out of the body, and Ellie's like, might as well kill it, huh? And she ends up killing the infected. The expression on Ellie's face, so yeah, I guess she is angry at the infected because they're the reason that Tess died, and she kind of liked Tess, and also there's a reason for everything wrong in the world. So the expression on Ellie's face, she's okay with killing the infected, which is, you know what, it's good. It's good if you want to survive. We get this scene where they notice a crashed plane, and Ellie is like, have you flown in one of those before? And I was gonna say Pedro. But no, Joel is like, yeah, I've flown in them and they are a mess, they're too expensive and everything. And Ellie is like, who the heck cares? You get to fly in the sky. Because again, she is of a generation that was born after the infection. As they are walking, Ellie asks questions about how the infection even took over the world in the first place, and Joel is like, well, it looks like cordyceps mutated, it ended up entering the food, certain types of food like wheat and sugar, and then all of that wheat and sugar were distributed around the world. People started eating them, they got sick, then they started biting other people, and in a few days the world it stopped functioning, everything, and it was basically the apocalypse, right? And Ellie is like, but what about the first person that got bit? How did that first person got infected? But yeah, these are certain questions that I highly doubt we'll ever get an answer to. But you know what? Maybe we will, because the show is giving us flashbacks. As they're walking, Joel wants to make a shortcut and he's like, hey, we can cut through the forest. And Ellie's like, why? And he's like, well, there's something that I don't want you to see. And of course, Ellie's like, well, now I have to see it. So she like rushes ahead, and this is where she ends up seeing a pile of bones. And Joel is like, yeah, when the war started to end, a whole lot of soldiers were evacuating little, like smaller villages and everything, and telling the people that they'll be taken to quarantine zones. And if there was space in the quarantine zones, then the people would get to live there, and if there wasn't space there, well, those people were ended up being murdered. And Ellie's like, but why murder people? Why not let them be? And Joel is like, well, the dead can't be infected, so those people, they had to be killed by the soldiers. And this is where we get our flashback way back to 2003, and we get to see Bill, and he's looking at his little town being evacuated, but he's not going. He isn't. And after the evacuation has been done, Bill comes out, he has a gas mask on, he has weapons, he's ready to fight, and yeah, no one's there. So he's the only one living in a small town, and he's like, yep, might as well start piling up resources and increasing my defenses. So we get this little montage of Bill basically building traps, a fence around his little town and everything, and just living alone. So it turns out that Frank is trying to get to Boston because the quarantine zone over in Baltimore, it got destroyed, and there were like 10 or some people with Frank, but he's the only one left, and he hasn't eaten for days, and he just wants help, and he's like, just let me go, I want to get to Boston. And Bill is like, are you infected? And Frank is like, no, I just have a bruise, I'm not infected. And of course Bill checks whether or not he's infected by using one of the devices that Fedra uses, and then when he's made sure that he's not infected, Bill is like, okay, off on your way then. And Frank is like, well, you do know that I'm hungry, right? And Bill is like, I can't feed you. If I end up feeding you and you tell other people, then other people will come looking for a meal too, a free meal. And Frank is like, hey, I won't tell anyone, okay? And you know that I'm already bad at lying. So of course, because also he's been alone for so long, and I guess he likes Frank. He's like, okay, I'll feed you to a meal and a shower. So while Bill is preparing lunch for both of them, Frank is just moving around the room, and he notices a whole lot of dust. So yeah, even though Bill has been living in this house with food and defenses and weapons and everything, he hasn't necessarily been taking care of the house. It's not clean, and I guess Bill and Frank is like, well, I guess that needs to change. Frank compliments Bill's cooking skills, and he also likes the fact that Bill knows which wine to pair with the food, and yeah, you can see that the sparks are happening. After they have had their food, this is where Frank is like, hey, is that a vintage piano? And Bill is like, yeah, it was my mother's. And Frank ends up going through some of the songs, and he notices the one which is titled The Best of Linda Ronstadt, and he's like, yep, this is yours, isn't it, Bill? And he sits down and he starts playing, and he isn't the best singer or a piano player. And Bill is like, hey, enough is enough, let me play this. And Bill ends up playing in a very, very emotional manner because it's been years. And this is where Frank is like, hey, who was the girl you were singing about? And Bill is like, there's no girl. And Frank is like, I know what you are. And the two end up sharing a kiss. And this is where Frank is like, hey, Bill, go and take a shower. And Bill is like, yeah, I'll do that. So we get this scene where once Bill comes out of the bathroom after taking a shower, Frank is waiting for him in bed, and he's like, "Come on in, Bill." And Bill lays down with him, and he's like, "Have you ever done this before?" And Bill is like, "No, I haven't. I did once with a girl a long time ago." So he's been closeted. He's lived a very, very secluded life, and Frank is like, "Hey, I'm here. Don't worry about it, and we'll start slow at first, okay?" And this is where Frank is like, hey, you do realize that I'm not like a sex worker, right? But then again, if we end up doing this, I'm going to stay for a few more days. Will that be okay with you? And Bill is like, yeah, it will be okay. So it turns out that those couple of days ended up turning into 3 years, and yeah, even though they do love each other and they've been staying together, they do have certain differences because if Frank is like, hey, you need to show your love when it comes to taking care of the details. So this is my house too, this is my street too, so I want to spruce it up a bit. I wanna trim the lawn. I wanna like spruce up the wine shop and the furniture store. And Bill is like, why do you want to waste resources? And Frank is like, it's not about wasting resources, okay? I want to do that because once we have friends over, this place will look nice. And Bill is like, we don't have any friends, Frank. There aren't any friends to be had outside. And Frank is like, well, surprise, because I've been talking to this very lovely woman on the radio. And Bill is like, what? So it turns out that the nice woman that Frank has been talking to over the radio was Tess, and nice to see Tess back, even though she died in the previous episode. But of course, Bill has his reservations when Tess and Joel come over for lunch, and yeah, Tess and Frank really hit it off. And Frank is like, hey, Tess, I have something to show you. Why don't you come on in? And that leaves behind Bill and Joel so that they can have a different kind of conversation with each other because they are kind of the same person. This is where Joel is like, hey, Bill, I get it. You want to keep your place safe. You want to keep your husband, boyfriend, whatever safe. I want to do that too. However, you need our help, okay? Those fences, they only have like what, another year on it tops. Your traps will stop working and everything. You don't have medicine and nothing. So let us help you. We can do this. So of course Bill agrees because again, he is a survivalist and he knows that you can't survive without a proper resource, and he also wants to keep Frank safe. And then we get a scene where Frank and Tess talk about communicating over the radio via code words. And he's like, yeah, let's go to decades of music, 80s is danger, and yada yada yada. So while these two are talking, Joel ends up warning Bill. He's like, you know what, you guys are quite safe here. Fedra won't come up here. Stray infected will come up here, but you can handle them. The biggest danger you guys have are raiders. The raiders will come, Bill. They will come. More years pass and we get a scene where Frank is trying to keep Bill energetic and young because he doesn't have the best stamina. He already has a stitch on his side. And as they're running, Frank is like, hey, come on, keep on running. I have something to show you. And Bill is like, huh? He's very excited because he has a high libido and he loves Frank. And I guess it's if it were up to him, he would be like on top of Frank every day. But yeah, also the scene was it was also a bit sad. But we'll talk about it in a few minutes. So Frank ends up taking Bill to his little garden, and he shows Bill that he ended up growing strawberries, and Bill is like, where the heck did you get the seeds? And Frank is like, well, I traded a very small gun with Tess for them. It was a small gun, Bill. Let it be. So they end up tasting the strawberries, and yeah, of course they're very happy. And then this is a scene that connected to the previous scene where with both of them running and Frank trying to keep Bill healthy, and Bill is like, I'm sorry, Frank, I'm sorry. And Frank is like, sorry for what? And Frank is like, and Bill is like, for growing older, like quicker than you. And Frank is like, hey, don't worry about it, because older means we're still here, okay? And then they kiss each other, and again, Bill is ready to get on top of Frank right over the strawberries, and Frank is like, no, let's not ruin the strawberries. And again, this scene, the fact that it was Frank who wanted to keep Bill healthy, and then what happened to Frank later on in the episode, I'm like, it happens. Like, you can try to have a good diet and exercise daily and everything, but when it comes to certain medical conditions, you just don't know. You just don't know when they'll like rear their ugly heads. You just don't know. More years pass, and yeah, the raiders do come. However, Bill and Frank are able to basically deal with them because of the traps that Bill ended up creating. But Bill did end up getting shot, and Frank is like, you need my help, let's go in. And I'm like, I don't think he's going to die right here. As Frank is trying to take care of Bill's wound, Bill is like, you have to call Joel. Frank, you have to call Joel. And Frank is like, hey, I'll call Joel, whatever, but I need to tend to your wound now. And as far as Bill is concerned, he trusts Joel, and he's like, when I'm gone, if I'm gone because of this wound, I want you to know that I ended up making spare keys and the codes and everything. I left a list of instructions for you, and again, call Joel. Joel will be the one who will take care of you, because again, Bill trusts Joel. And also I forgot, in the previous scene during the strawberry gardening scene, there was a moment where Bill is like, you know what, Frank? I never felt afraid before you came into my life. And I'm like, aw, that is romantic in a sense. That is romantic, that you aren't necessarily afraid of losing your own life. You're afraid of not being able to keep other people, the people you love, safe. And then more years pass, and Frank isn't doing well. He has been painting and everything, but he has been losing his motor skills and everything, and it's been tough. It's been tough, and Bill can't really walk properly because he got shot, and other stuff that happens with, when you grow older. And then we get this scene where Frank is like, Bill, this is my last day. We have to talk. And then these two have a very, very emotional talk, which was acted in a very, very impressive manner by both actors. And Bill is like, hey, don't lose hope. Maybe we'll find a doctor. Maybe we will. Maybe a doctor will come on over. And Frank is like, and do what? Do what? There wasn't a cure for my condition even before the world came to an end, Bill. And it's just the end for me. I want this to end on my terms. And this is where Frank ends up telling what he wants Bill to do. He's like, Bill, you're going to take me to the boutique. I'm going to pick out the clothes that we have to wear, and then you'll end up marrying me, and then you'll prepare a very nice dinner for us, and then you'll crush all of the pills in the wine, and I'll drink that wine, and then you'll take me to bed, and then I'll fall asleep in your arms. Bill, I want you to do that. And Bill is like, no, I won't do that, Frank. I won't. And Bill is like, you love me, Frank. You love me, Bill, don't you? And Frank and Bill is like, yeah, I love you. And Frank is like, well, I need you to love me the way that I want you to love me. Okay, Bill? I need you to do this for me. And of course, Bill accepts. We get the scene where they go to the boutique, they get all dressed up, and it's time for them to get married. And yeah, it's time for them to eat their dinner, and for Bill to give that wine with crushed pills to Frank. Now, when Bill was pouring the wine, I was like, something's going to happen. I can just feel that something's going to happen, and it did. So it turns out that there were already crushed pills in the wine bottle, and yeah, Bill is ready to say goodbye to the world along with Frank. And Frank is like, I don't approve of that, Bill. I don't approve. And Bill is like, it doesn't matter, Frank. It doesn't matter. I'm satisfied. I lived my purpose. You were my purpose. Loving you, protecting you, that was my purpose. And I just can't keep on living without you. And Frank is like, you know what? Objectively, I get where you're coming from, and it is romantic. It is romantic, and I can understand where Frank was coming from, because leaving Bill all alone, that's tough. That's tough. Leaving your loved one behind just like that. Might as well say bye bye to the world together, right? Joel, of course, notices that something is wrong, and he's like, Bill, Frank, where are you? And Ellie is like, maybe they left. And Joel tries to go into the bedroom door is locked, and while that's happening, Ellie notices a letter from Bill along with a car key. Ellie ends up reading the letter, and Bill tells Joel about everything that happened with him and Frank. And he tells Joel that, you know what, you and I, even though we weren't friends, you and I were basically the same person. Our purpose is to protect other people, to protect the people we love. And I ended up protecting Frank as long as I could. And you know what, I leave everything to you, Joel. Take whatever you need and use them to protect. And of course, Ellie stops, and Joel is like, why? What is it? And Ellie ends up handing the letter to Joel, and yep, Bill ended up writing the letter that you use anything you need, and you use those resources to protect Tess. And Joel couldn't do that. Joel couldn't protect Tess. Joel goes out because, again, he is sad about Tess dying. And his daughter died, Tess died, and he basically throws the letter away, and then he heads back in to talk to Ellie. Before heading back in, he does check out the car that Bill left him. And this is where Joel is like, you know what, we got a car, and my brother seems to be in trouble. He used to be a firefly, so we are heading towards him. He might know about the medical facility that I'm supposed to drop you off. And Ellie's like, yeah, okay, sounds like a plan. And he's like, but there are certain ground rules. Ellie's like, okay, name them. And the first rule is, Joel is like, you don't mention Tess. You never mention Tess, okay? We do not bring up our pasts. Okay? And Ellie's like, yeah, I understand that. And also, Joel is like, you do what I tell you, okay? You do as I say, no questions asked, yada, yada, yada. got it? And Ellie's like, yep, whatever you say goes. I think there's also a rule about keeping the bite mark hidden, because if anyone notices it, they will shoot Ellie. And anyway, they go into the cellar where Bill had all of his guns and ammunition and everything, and even again Ellie is like, can I have a gun? And Joel is like, no. We also got an answer to why the radio was playing that 80s song. So it was basically like, if Bill didn't reset the countdown every few weeks, it was supposed to play this particular playlist. And I think they died in April. Yeah, both of them. So while Joel is taking a shower, Ellie has already taken one. So yeah, while Joel is taking a shower, Ellie is like snooping around and she finds a gun. And of course, Ellie wants the gun. She needs the gun, basically. And she's like, okay, I'm going to take this gun and I'm going to hide it. Because yeah, she doesn't tell Joel about finding a gun and she puts it in her bag. So yeah, she'll probably end up using it in an upcoming episode. And Joel, he's all freshened up and he's like, okay, let's go. And of course, Ellie is very excited to be sitting in a car. She doesn't even know what a seatbelt is, so Joel helps with that. And then she takes out a cassette, and it has songs by Linda Ronstadt. And he's like, do you know her? Do you know her? Ellie's like, I don't, but it's better than nothing. So they just play Linda Ronstadt as they drive away from Bill and Frank's house. And as the episode ends, it pans all the way back into Bill and Frank's bedroom, and they ended up leaving a window open so that the room didn't stink because of their like dead bodies. And yeah, I'm actually glad that the show didn't show their dead bodies. There was no reason to. And yeah, this is where the episode ends, and it was a very, very emotional episode. Again, this was content that wasn't in the games. So kudos to the writers for handling all of this, handling the new content in such a manner. With Joel taking Ellie to his brothers, let's see what happens next. And yeah, now for people who aren't familiar with the games, they might watch this particular episode and feel that The Last of Us ended up using the bury your gaze trope. But you know what? I don't think that's what happened here. Because again, Joel and not Joel, my bad. Bill and Frank aren't the only queer characters in this franchise. Just wait and see. Just wait and see. So I can't really say that the bury your gaze trope was used. But yeah, let me know what you thought of the episode down in the comment section below. Until next time, stay happy, stay safe, stay blessed. See you guys later. Bye.